What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves, physically, emotionally, and spiritually?
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them, visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies? Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Jonathan Hammond. Now Jonathan is an author, spiritual teacher, energy healer, shamanic practitioner, and spiritual counselor. Jonathan is a graduate of Harvard University and the University of Michigan and has completed 4 years of training in interspirituality and spiritual counseling at the One Spirit Learning Alliance in New York City. He was also ordained as an Interfaith Minister in 2008. Now he joins me today to discuss his latest book, The Shaman's Mind, Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life. Now, Jonathan is deeply committed to empowering people and healing them by bringing indigenous earth wisdom like Huna into the modern world in practical and usable ways. Jonathan Hammond, welcome to the show.
Aloha. It's really great to be here. Thank you.
Aloha to yourself as well. Now, obviously, this is based on your journey eventually to Hawaii. You're from New York. You're still currently in... Well, no, actually, you're not in New York right now. You're in Florida, obviously.
Yeah, yes. I'm staying with family in Florida, but New York is my home base, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And how many times have you been to Hawaii now?
Too many to count. Probably over 75. Well, many times, yeah.
Okay. And just so we've got the context of this, let's just start from this perspective, right? What is an important message of your work? What is it you do?
What is that I do? So I'm a shamanic practitioner and shamanic healer and shamanic teacher. And it was, and I have been that for many years, Reiki teacher as well. And it was through a series of synchronicities and happy accidents and really crazy experiences that led me to Hawaii to tune into the shamanic lineages there, and one in particular that's called Huna, which is a shamanic philosophy that comes out of Polynesia. And when I discovered Huna, that sort of synthesized my shamanic understanding in a deeper way, and led me to begin to understand exactly how shamans think, and to teach other people about how shamans think. And so it was via Hawaii that I actually found the path that I now follow most predominantly.
Okay, Huna, that sounds interesting. And now, where did Huna come from?
Huna, it comes out of Hawaii, comes out of Polynesia. Like I said, it's a philosophy that's based on 7 principles, 7 ideas that actually have to do with how the unconscious mind works. So what's really interesting about Hawaiian shamanism is that the Hawaiians were onto the nature of the unconscious mind thousands of years before what we think of the people who discovered that, Jung and Freud and all of that. They were onto that well before that. And so it's 7 ideas. There's a lot to Huna, but the basic philosophy is around 7 principles that if you can align with, if you can learn to integrate them, to bring them into your life, will actually bring you into and to help you see through the lens of the shaman, how the shamans think, how they work with energy, how they work with interconnection, how they work with hidden realities. And it's 7 principles, and you've heard all of these principles before, or you've heard these ideas before, but never have I found them so elegantly put together. In shamanism, we don't have manifestos or commandments to follow. So it's only based on our observance of the shamans that we have a sense of what it is that they're doing. And a lot of times shamans are operating from a place that is so specifically metaphysical to their culture that we may not even have an understanding of how they even think. But these 7 principles offer us a way into a universal shamanic paradigm of which we can all apply to our life, even in the West.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into the 7 key principles as well. Now, for you to go on this journey, you were an actor. Have I got that right? Yep. And how did you go from becoming, pursuing acting to pursuing Huna?
Well, I think, what do you do when you act? You learn the lines, you learn the blocking, and then you hope that inspiration comes through. And so what I thought was my interest in acting, I now know was more that I was channeling, and my parents could see that I was imitating and emulating and tuned into the imagination, and so they thought maybe actor. And so that seemed like my path for a very long time. And then what I found, I was relatively successful. I was a New York actor, did some Broadway shows, did some television. You can find me on Law and Order. And what I found was that at a certain point, I had always had a rich spiritual life. I'd always had that, which I thought was just to negotiate the difficulties of show business. That was initially my interest in anything spiritual, but it kept taking on more importance and became more predominant in my life. And then there was a sense that I was needed in a different way, and that I was called in a different way, and I needed to spend myself in a different way. And that led me to the very, very counterintuitive decision before I'd even paid off my loans from drama school to change my life. And that decision actually happened on the Haleakala crater in Maui.
Fascinating. And as you say there, you kind of felt that you were channeling as an actor. I would know a little bit about that after doing the channeling docuseries that I've been working on for a while. And yes. So would you ever find yourself, do you think, going back to acting? Is that a path you'd ever go back to, do you think?
No. That is just has nothing to do with my life. I've been called in such a different way. And I also feel like we're at a time on the planet where we all need to step into how we can serve the collective. We're all feeling that, and certainly anyone listening to this feels that in whatever way that they do. And so, no, that feels like a different person, a different time. And just to say, I think it's so important to remind people that the soul's journey is it can be a counterintuitive one, and the soul, the material in the soul, doesn't necessarily care what the ego says and what family says and what society says. And if you're called in a certain direction that doesn't make sense, or that feels like I can't believe I'm being called in this way, listen, because there is an evolution of consciousness that's happening on the planet right now, and so many people are changing their lives and changing the narrative of their lives in order to be part of that bigger solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And why did you write this book now? I mean, where did the inspiration come to do this book? I mean, obviously, and how long did it take to write the book as well?
Yeah, books take a long time. It took about 2 years. But again, what I found was that this was a practical way to teach people how to get better. We all have an altruistic impulse. Many of us do have an altruistic impulse to serve the planet. But if we're too wounded, if we're too mired in our own stuff, we have a compromised ability to do that. And we all have wounding. We all have things that we need to heal. We all have things that we have to address. And this material helps people address that so that they can get on with their bigger purpose. Everyone does have a bigger part to play. And so for me, it was about this indigenous, simple, practical material that everyone could apply to their life, that could help them clean up their mess enough so that they can be part of a bigger solution. So that's essentially why I wrote it.
Part of a bigger solution, yes. Okay, I'm going to come back to that.
Yep.
I want to say a little bit more on that. But just before we move on to the Principles of Huna, who was your teacher in Hawaii, and how did you meet that teacher?
Yeah, well, I have a couple. My main teacher is named Serge Kahili King, and it's actually these principles are based on 7 Hawaiian words, and these are unique translations of these 7 Hawaiian words that Serge came up with. There's another teacher named Dr. Hugh Len Haleakala, who wrote a book on Ho'oponopono. He was instrumental as well. In Huna, you've heard the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. From a Huna perspective, because we think of everything as a reflection of what's going on with us, we would say that when the teacher is ready, the student will appear. And so there was an inevitable sense when I met Serge that who was when I met him, I think he was 78, and I think he's 82 now. I just knew that this was my next teacher, and he's been teaching Huna for decades and decades, and so he was definitely my main influence.
Right. Okay. Well, I just want to go back to what we were just talking about before. You mentioned in previous interviews that you've done, I think you may have mentioned this in the book as well, maybe, what we heal in ourselves is paid back into the collective. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's the thread I wanted to go on now. Mm-hmm. So you say that we all have a greater part to play once we have healed our own issues, in a sense. Mm-hmm. But surely that could be that some of those issues could be going on for life, right? Through different ways. If we don't learn it the first way, surely it shows up in our life in other ways. So then, if we're always on that journey of not playing that part in doing what we maybe came here to do, is that a disservice, do you think, to ourselves in not playing that part if we don't find that?
Well, I think in general we do. I think that if you listen to your body, if you follow what animates you, and if you avoid what doesn't, you will find your directionality in life. When I talk about when we heal what is in ourselves, we heal the collective. That really goes along with the second principle of Huna, which says that there are no limits, that it is a limitless universe. So what that means is that separation is actually just merely an illusion. So from that perspective, that means that there's only one big thing happening, of which we are all an inextricable part of that one thing. And that one thing sees itself or experiences itself through each of us individually. It's kind of like we're each waves on the ocean, but then there's still the ocean of which we're connected to. So to heal something, because there is no separation, to heal something in yourself without ever leaving your home, without having a direct influence on anyone else, from an energetic point of view, because there is no separation, you heal that in the other. So, Serge said something that blew my mind once. He said, "Oh, well, if you want to heal someone, think of them and you feel good." And so what it implies is that we are each an individual microcosm of the macrocosm. And that there is no separation. So as I improve in whatever way I improve, that has a benefit on all beings. And so Huna is so much about that what we heal in ourselves is an altruistic act for all beings.
Yeah, and that healing of whatever part it is within ourselves, whatever issues that we may have, right? Mm-hmm. That also we see in another, if we're not going to heal those in ourselves, then, well, I mean, relationships are big trigger points, aren't they? Right?
Sure.
For any healing, right?
Sure.
So if you're walking around with certain issues, and you know, you try, you're going to heal yourself. If you're not seeing that in the other that you're with, where is that? How is that working? Do you know what I mean? Am I making that? I don't know if I'm making that clear there.
I think you are. Well, let me say this: again, to go back to the principles, because the principles tell you everything. So the first principle of Huna, it's a Hawaiian word named Ike, and it says that the world is what you think it is. And so what that means is that not just that you will experience the world based on how you think about it, but that the world itself, reality itself, will shift and change based on your thoughts and beliefs. So that means that that your fingerprints are on everything that you experience, because on some level your thoughts and beliefs created those things. So if there's anything externally in your life, even a partner that you're having difficulties with, or that you're having issues with in some way, that on some level you have a complicity with those problems. You in some way co-created those problems. And so, you know, it's saying that everything we experience in life, even the bad stuff, that on some level that we do have some sort of complicity with in terms of its creation. So it's a very empowered philosophy, because it really says that you got to take 100% responsibility for what's going on between your ears, because what's going on between your ears is creating literally the world, creating reality.
Yeah. Okay, but you can't control someone else's actions, can you? Do you know what I mean? If they're gonna be a certain way towards you, whoever it may be, right? No matter how you are towards them, or no matter how balanced you try to keep, what do you do? I mean, yes, we can apply this, but it's what you're saying in the application of what you're suggesting here. It's just a way of centering ourselves. It's a way of like not reacting to someone else's issues and trying to keep within your own lane, in a sense.
Well, it's also, is love present? You know, again, one of the principles of Huna is aloha, is love, and what that means is that love is in Huna, it's the only ethic we follow. That every action we take, everything we say, everyone we invite into our life includes love's perspective. And what does love mean from a Huna perspective? It means the sharing of experience in order to create happiness. And if that's not there, that's an indication that something needs addressing, or that we're somewhere that we shouldn't be. It's not that we're to get along with everyone necessarily. It's that what we're looking for ourselves is that we're creating our lives with inclusive of love's perspective. So that helps keep you clear about what you're supposed to be focusing on, what you're inviting into your life, who you're inviting into your life, and who you're not.
Sometimes they may already be invited in, though, that they may already be there. Right?
So true.
So there may be people watching this that are in certain situations where, you know, they can't just get out of. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, what, you know, how do you apply this? I suppose. Have you found the applying of these teachings to have helped you got through some dark times?
Oh, yeah. Well, not only that, but that's the nature of shamanic healing. The nature of shamanic healing is to take what comes up in our lives that is dark, that is difficult, that is scary even, and to really look at what it symbolizes. You know, from a Hawaiian shamanic perspective, it's out of the darkness. So in Hawaii, they believe that the day starts at sundown, and it's out of the nighttime dream of the night that the light emerges. So from a shamanic perspective, we're always looking at whatever difficulties are happening are the seeds of the light of a new awareness, the opportunity. And so we're always looking at that. So when I'm in my private practice, when someone comes to me and they're experiencing difficulties or illness, or the relationship's breaking up, or they're questioning long-held values, I know that the hidden gift of those things are contained in those difficulties. I may not tell them that at the time because they may slug me, but I do know that if we can get to what those things are pointing toward, they will bring about a new awareness, a new way of being. Always, always, always. That is the nature of shamanic healing, to take what the darkness is and look at what it symbolizes and change what it symbolizes as an opportunity, as an opening, as an awakening. And so that's why even if you are experiencing difficulties in a relationship, for instance, to actually look at that and let that be there, and to say, what is the opportunity here? How can we both grow from this tension that we have together, from this friction we have together? What is that? And there is a hidden opportunity in all of that. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to take the bait, but that's certainly the opportunity.
Yes, and you mentioned your practice there as well. Is that something you do online?
Yeah, I mean, it used to. I mean, before COVID-19, I used to see people in person. Now I do mainly shamanic counseling. I do a kind of spiritual counseling online until we can go back and I can see people in person. But it's all energy work. It's all energy work. Because and particularly according to this philosophy, if you change your thinking, you're changing the energy. So even if I'm not actually doing hands-on work or leading someone in some sort of something ceremonial, if we can get them to look at how they're thinking, what they're believing, what they're intending, that is to shift the nature of the energy that they're creating and the energy that they're inviting in from the universe.
And like you said there, keep remembering this point, whatever we heal in ourselves, we pay back into the collective. Kind of reminds me with some of the people I've been interviewing, in prison. They are going through a healing process, and you could say for them, they're putting it back into the collective, and they're having to look at their issues. They've got no choice to get to that parole board, but to have to look through the other issues.
And I would even go so far to say is that we're not that much different right now. This quarantine is a kind of prison. It is about, and I have seen, despite the fact that the narrative you see on television is that it's so scary and it's so bad, what I have seen with all of my clients, with all my students, is that most of them, no, I would even go so far as to say all of them are really having this exponential spiritual growth. Why? Because they're going inward. They're being forced to go inward. They're being forced to get very close to themselves, to let go of external stimuli and really look at what are the things in what's actually matters to me, what's real for me. And values are shifting, and even individual senses of self are shifting based on us going inward. So and I do have a couple clients as well who have been in prison, and they talk about that this is very similar to their prison experience. Because that really was about there isn't anything else to do. You're either going to be one client in particular, you're either kind of be slovenly and depressed, or you're going to start reading and you're going to start meditating and unfolding spiritually. And you do see that a lot,
So we've obviously heard the word shamanism quite a lot in this interview. You're a shamanistic practitioner. Just very quickly, what is shamanism, and what did you do to go on that journey?
Sure. So shamanism is about the reverence of nature. It is about worshiping nature. Now, the reason why we would revere or worship anything is because it has something to teach us. So what does nature have to teach us? So if you take a forest and you leave it alone to do its thing, that forest will continue an endless process of growth and creation. And there may be some fighting among species, and there may be a drought or a forest fire or something like that. But the overall direction of nature is one towards growth and creation. Also exemplified in nature is the vast interconnectivity. So there's a holistic quality of nature where everything fits together. So, and we are not separate from nature. So that means that the force of growth and creation moves through us. And that means that just like the forest is, we are also interconnected to all things. And to place yourself in that seat and allow yourself to and if you think about nature, it doesn't say no to itself. Nature doesn't have low self-esteem. Nature doesn't turn on itself. Nature doesn't deny itself what is good for it. We do that. But to emulate nature is to let that go and to start living from an expression of yes, living with the sense that growth and creation are part of my birthright, that's what I'm supposed to be doing all the time. And not only that, but that I'm connected to literally everything to help me do that. So that's sort of the nature of shamanism. And then, of course, working with the spiritual realms, which from a shamanic perspective, the spiritual realms are as real as the rainforests. So when we think of nature from a shamanic perspective, we're thinking of the spiritual realms as well. And that vast interconnectivity is us connected to the spiritual realms as well, that help us do all this with grace, that help us live from this place of continued growth and creation. So that's what I think of what shamanism is.
Well, thank you very much just for explaining that there as well, Jonathan. So let's just get into the 7 key principles of Huna as well, just to touch on them very briefly.
Sure. So the first one, the world is what you think it is. So as I said, that the world is creates itself, reality creates itself based on how you think about it. The second principle says there are no limits, which means that it is a limitless universe, that separation is merely an illusion. So that's that holistic perspective that we talked about. The third principle, which we haven't addressed yet, says that energy flows where attention goes. So what that means is that where we put our attention and our focus elicit an energetic response from the universe that bring about the nearest physical equivalent of the object of our attention and focus. So what we focus our attention on elicits energy that brings about creation. You see, it's so much about the power of mind. The fourth principle says now is the moment of power. So you've heard talk of now with mindfulness and all of that, but what it's getting at, what this principle is getting at, is that now is the only place where we can access power, because now is the only place where we can do something. So you can't get burned by yesterday's sun, you can't get wet by tomorrow's rain. You can only do anything right now. So that's what that principle is saying. And from a shamanic perspective, shamans don't necessarily want to abide in the now; they want to do something with it. So there's something more active about the Huna idea of now. The next principle is aloha, which just simply means love. That love's perspective is a part of everything we do. The sixth principle is, which is probably my favorite and sometimes most challenging. It says that all power comes from within. All power comes from within. So the power to create your life is entirely within you. Now, in the age of social media and assimilating to society and keeping up with the Joneses, this is a principle that's hard to follow, because we're all wired and expected to assimilate and to fit in. But this principle says that your life is created through you, and that it's not through others' influence or others' models of what we should be that we find ourselves, but only through ourselves. And then the last principle says effectiveness. I love this one. Effectiveness is the measure of truth, meaning that if it works, it's true. And if it doesn't work, it isn't true. And so what this principle is getting at is that the only thing that's true is actually what's true for you. And how do you know if it's true for you? If it works. And so again, these you can go down a rabbit hole with all these, because they're really deep ideas. And there's a chapter of each one in my book, as well as practices that help you integrate these ideas into your everyday awareness. But those are the 7 principles in short. And you can see in some way they allow you a sense that I'm really co-creating my life. I really have autonomy and the power to make my life be whatever I want it to be.
So true. I love those principles there. Thank you for sharing them.
Sure.
I think as well, you've mentioned this before, but the idea that, not to care what people think. And that was a big one it's a big one for all of us, but you've also, had that impressed on you as well. And you've gone down that path.
We all have, and it'll get on the spiritual path. It'll get you every time. On the spiritual path, we are following our intuition, and we're following invisible forces. If we are too connected to what everyone thinks and when you turn on television, it's telling you who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to look like, what your money's supposed to look like, how you're supposed to fit in, what men are, what women are, what black people are, all of that. And to live a spiritual life is to be creatively engaged with yourself first and foremost. So often with my clients, I'll say to them, and when I say it, I could see them bathed in relief. I'll say, you're a little weird. You're actually a little weird. And I can see them just go, oh my, I am a little weird, and I don't have to keep up with what everyone's expecting me to be. And it's not just society, it's family, it's all of it. And if you're really called to be on the spiritual path, I guarantee you are going to go to battle with the need to assimilate or the need to come from yourself. And it's such an important thing for each of us to look at.
Yeah, absolutely it is. It's the one. I think I'm still working on it. I'm definitely. I can actually say I'm still working on it. Be caring what people think, but you look at the people that kind of go past that, they seem pretty happy. They may not be always the most what we call successful. Like as you've said, but success to them may mean something different, completely different.
Well, and success is really about what is the quality of what's going on between your ears, moment to moment to moment. That is what is, and if it's good, that is what's successful. When we talk about what everyone thinks, what we're talking about is a story of ourselves, how our lives are supposed to look, how our money is supposed to look, how we're supposed to fit in. And actually, we may be called to something that is singular to us. And so that's really what the spiritual path asks us to really look at.
Yeah. Again, I'll just say, one of the most important things I'm taking from this as well is it's all within us. Everything we want is within us. But sometimes we can't. We give up, don't we? We give up trying to figure it all out, and we just say, "I'm going to go with the flow." I forget it. Mm-hmm. Forget trying to work it out.
Yeah. And if I were to say, what does it mean to live a spiritual life? It means to be creatively engaged, with what's happening. And sometimes what's happening is not pleasant. And sometimes what's happening is anger or jealousy or lust or whatever it is. And to be engaged with that, to say that this is happening, to accept that this is happening. And it's only in the acceptance that we can actually do something about it, change it, understand it in a different way. And so to remain creatively engaged, one of the practices that I teach in the shaman's mind is a Hawaiian practice called ho'oponopono, which is about essentially reparenting oneself. That if you're doing it right, you are like you have an internal parent that is constantly following around this toddler who's getting into all kinds of trouble, who's terrified or who's angry or who's scared or who's jealous or whatever it is, and to attend to them and to let them and to guide them in a different way. And we all need that inner authority in ourselves, but that means that we have to be awake and aware of what's happening. And to go on autopilot is to become zombified, which is what so many people are doing.
How do you get yourself back on the path? And do you recognize that you've slipped off sometimes? And was it almost like a life achievement to get to where you've got now, to have this self-realization so you wouldn't go back and stray back again? You just wouldn't let yourself do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly, you're not looking at an enlightened person here. You're looking at someone who's working it out, just like the rest of you. And if I'm a step ahead, I'm only one step ahead. So just to say that out loud. I think that when you're called, you're called, and what will happen is the gifts of following a spiritually driven life are so immense, and the riches that one receives, both material and otherwise, are so wonderful that you end up wanting to stay on it. Because spirit, nature, the earth, it has such a better plan for you than what your pea brain could have come up with. It really does. And if you allow yourself, a prayer with real, with real cojones is, you guide me and I will go do and be as you see fit. That is a really, really intense prayer. And to follow it is to give yourself over to something that actually wants for you something that is beyond what you would imagine.
And absolutely. And sometimes it might be, you could do that, but you may find that you're still waking up in the same place, right? But maybe that's where you're supposed to.
Yeah. And it's also about timing. It's also about tuning into what's happening. It's about really looking at, this door is closing. And if the door is closing, I'm going to take a hint that door is supposed to be closing. And again, that's the creative engagement that we're talking about. It's not that all of a sudden you graduate to a life of ice cream and lollipops. It's that you want what you want. You remove the doubt as much as you can. You work on the doubt and the fear as much as you can, and then you allow yourself to see where it is you get with that.
Yeah, and removing that doubt and fear. You've said it many times on many different interviews that you've been doing recently. It's not easy, but it can be done. Removing doubt. I mean, how do you remove doubt? How do you do it yourself?
Well, I really do think, and I talk about it in the book that, I'm not just talking to you. We have three selves, and we have three different aspects of being. The Hawaiians call the unconscious mind, the part that holds the doubt and the fear, the old patterning, the old wounding. They call that the ku. Or the unconscious mind. And so that means that there are different aspects of ourselves. And when that comes up, it's like, I see you there. I want this, but then the doubt comes up. I see you there, or the fear comes up. I acknowledge you. I see you there. We're still going to go here. And I'm grateful because on some level you're trying to protect me. You're trying to keep me vigilant in some way, or you're trying to get me to resist something because I'd be entering into a new paradigm if I followed this. I see you and I even love you, but we're going this way anyway, And so it's really a matter of just looking at that we all have antithetical forces within us that don't want us to grow, that are trying to keep us protected. There's a mechanism in the brain that keeps us in a constant relation to a rigid sense of self. And so when we start moving away from the sense of self that we know ourselves to be, the brain will start chattering and start getting anxious. And so that's there. And so we have to be aware of that. And we acknowledge that fear and that doubt, but we don't let it run our show.
No, and I suppose also just to know, and these are all real cliche things I'm saying right now, but just to know that it's going to be okay, that as you kind of said, as what you did say, that this energy, this whatever this is, this life force, the universe, it seems to have a plan that's, like you said, better than what we can work out. And nothing's forever, is it? We nothing's forever, but we just sometimes have to go with the flow, don't we?
We do have to go with the flow.
I'm saying the same thing. I don't want to say the same. Is that what
well, let me say that. Let me put it to you this way, and this is coming up a lot with clients, particularly right now. I don't know is an answer. I don't know sometimes is a destination. And so it's really important that we allow ourselves, when we don't know, when we're in that in-between place, that place where the old sense of self feels outdated, the new sense of self is not yet formed, or the old life feels outdated and the new life hasn't yet come into being. And we're all experiencing that, particularly right now on the planet, because we can all feel that there's this huge, tumultuous, terrifying change happening that's also beneficial, but it's completely unresolved. And we can all feel that we're all in a kind of flux about that change. And so that means we can feel, and because we are each a microcosm of that macrocosm, we each have our own individual narrative that mirrors that in-between place. And to allow ourselves to be in that in-between place, to say that the in-between place is a place, and stay there until I get another message to take me further, is to stay on the path. And again, that's the creative engagement I'm talking about. If you don't know, you're not supposed to know. And that means you're supposed to sit, and you're supposed to wait until you receive the guidance.
But sometimes that sitting with all the issues that you've got, right? But maybe that sitting, that time that's passing is also the healing of some of those problems that you've got. Maybe you've got to sit through and not become antagonized with certain things, and not get set up with certain things, and see your behavior, and it's even in the sitting, even in that space you can change it. Yeah, maybe.
But that's right. And you do have to sit with it. Just to say, even right now, even with what's going on the planet, it's like there are some people who are like, I am now in denial. I now want it to be over. And so now I'm going outside, and now I'm going to create a narrative about how the mask is bad and blah, 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 and all of that stuff, and it's because they can't sit with what's happening. It's not time to go outside. At least a lot of places, it's not time to go outside. And it's time to remain inward. And so, and a lot of people are having a problem with that. And it's a matter of, it's the part of us that just needs to be with what's happening, and to not try to know something before it's time to know something.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Okay. Past relationships, past behavior, past experiences, how much does that affect from these teachings into who we are now in this present moment? And how could we kind of resolve some of that if we choose to?
Sure. So, the fourth principle says that now is the moment of power. So who you think you are is who you think you are right now. And so the past doesn't necessarily have any impact on us. It's only other than what we think it does now. So in order to look at the things in the past that we might not like, or that we're ashamed of, or mistakes that we make, if you actually in the present moment look at what was when I made that mistake, or when I did that shameful action, or whatever it was, what was I actually trying to do? We're always trying to do something. We're always trying to get a need met. We're always trying to, when we're acting unskillfully, we're trying to alleviate some pain. We may be acting from ignorance, we may be acting from innocence, but on some level, we're always trying to do something. And if you can look at your past experiences as something that you didn't know, that what you didn't know, and you can see that now, the only appropriate response is blanket forgiveness for those things. So that's what I would say is to really look at those things that you've done, and really look at them compassionately, and really see, I was actually trying to do something. I acted unskillfully. I didn't do the right thing, but I was trying to meet some need. I was trying to get somewhere.
Yes, and also this, this goes into your thoughts as well, doesn't it? Watching your thoughts. Our thoughts can be part of the problem. You've said this in so many different ways during this interview as well. What we think, it can cause us so much pain, can't it?
It can, and one of the exercises that I have you do in the book is we actually go through and you write down, what am I thinking? What am I thinking most of the time? What are my beliefs? It's been said that we have 70,000 thoughts a day, 69,999 we had yesterday. So, our thoughts are really on autopilot, and to begin to actually slow down enough to go, what am I thinking? What am I believing? What are the thoughts that are on autopilot? Because according to this wisdom, those thoughts are creating your life. They're creating reality, and they're creating reality for everyone else. So whatever's going on between your ears, if it's not beneficial to you, the whole world is stuck with it. Not only are you stuck with it, but the whole world is stuck with it. So to slow down enough to actually look at, what am I thinking? What am I believing? And from this perspective, because we see the universe as limitless, that means that we can think and believe any wonderful reality that the imagination can conceive, because that limitlessness also applies to the limitlessness within our own minds.
Right. And as much as you're going to chop and change that, you can do, but I mean, nothing's going to be delivered to you unless you really know what it is. I mean, if you're always constantly day by day saying, it could be this, could be that, I'm not too sure, do you know what I mean? And if the mind's always constantly like that, then it's just never going to manifest,
Yeah.
And big
I use this.
Take
go
time.
ahead. Sorry.
No, it's just saying. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I use this example a lot. If you are, it's just an example, but if you're a woman, over 35 and you have a belief that all women over 35 end up alone, as much as the spiritual intelligences of the universe would love to stick the guy next to you on the subway, you have cordoned off reality with that belief. And with your perpetual acknowledgement and strengthening of that belief, that the spiritual intelligences say, well, I could stick the guy next to you, but you wouldn't see it anyway because it's not part of your belief system. So until you address the belief system, that's what I have to work with.
What about if your beliefs are beliefs in things that are unhelpful, not positive, really just quite going along with someone else's beliefs because you love them? So they must be telling me the truth. They're telling me the truth, aren't they? They did these things, didn't they? I love them. They wouldn't lie to me, would they? They're fantastic. But other people from a distance will say that guy's full of shit or she's full of shit, and she's totally or he or she has totally misled you. But because you believed it, that's your belief system.
That's right. That's right. In Huna, we actually consider a magical power to be choice. Which means that we have to be able to discern for ourselves what's true for us. How do we know what's true? Is it effective for us? Does it work for us? Is it increasing love in our life, or is it not? And so, yes, of course, do some people have ill intentions toward us? Of course. But it's the power within us that allows that power to have the authority over us. So the power within us granted them the authority to have power over us. Yeah. All power comes from within,
I mean, what if our, higher self or some other part of us that we don't understand, the subconscious mind or whatever it is, right? Wants that experience of something a little bit less from love than we would think that we should be experiencing, because it wants something. This experience is needed, right? So we can't, where am I going with that? Well, I guess we're not always in control, are we? Maybe of the driving wheel. We think we are.
Yeah, I mean, but and also I think we have to identify what love is. I mean, if it's a need, it's a need, and if the need is, I've been working a lot, and I need a couple glasses of wine, that can be under the umbrella of love. Why not? And certainly I'll even go so far as to say, if one has low self-esteem and they're seeking out a bunch of sexual partners in order to find out that they're actually desirable and lovable. There are better ways, but if that's what they're doing, it doesn't necessarily mean that isn't coming from love. We're all trying to get our needs met however we get our needs met. Eventually, we would love everyone to just know that they're perfect and divine just as they are. But in the pursuance of that, we'll do whatever we need to do. And from that perspective, it's all under the umbrella of love, at least from where I sit.
What is not love to you?
Intentional hurt, the idea that I am more worthwhile or than someone else, that we're actually not the same. Any joy, fear, sadness, that the energy of those emotions are universal. Everyone's feeling the exact same thing when they feel those things. So it's the misknowledge that we're somehow separate from each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my father said to me just recently, come from love a bit more in your choices, and I don't always. I do not. I honestly don't. I just come from anger sometimes, and I can call it the redhead or whatever. I just I don't know. Maybe my buttons have just been pushed recently, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure all of us have in some perspective, sure. Right? But I mean, it just this could have happened before, but. Yeah, I mean, am I here to...
Well, let me say something about that. Let me say something because I think it'll be helpful. When we talk about shamanism and we talk about this reverence of nature, there are things in nature that we don't like. We don't like great white sharks. We don't like tarantulas. We don't like tsunamis. We don't like cancer. But we would never look at those things and say they're not supposed to be there. And so if nature is a template to show us about ourselves, then that means that those things inside of us that we might not like, they are there too. Anger is directive from a shamanic perspective. Anger says boundary being crossed. It's telling you something. Jealousy is even saying, I want what that guy has. That's directive. That's actually helpful information. So to pathologize our darker feelings we're hovering around Christian. We're hovering around Christian, not shamanic. Yeah,
you're right. When I have got angry, it is a boundary that's being crossed. Well, for me, it is.
That's
and
right.
Then I have to step back sometimes and think, was it a boundary? Really? Was it worth it? Was it really worth it? I could have just put the phone down. I don't have to go down that direction. But
it's what you're going to do with it. But the anger is legitimate. The anger is happening for a reason. It's helpful to like give yourself enough space to figure out what you want to do with that and what's the most skillful way to express it or not express it. But if it's happening, it's legitimate.
Yes, but then we have to have a awareness of our consequence. Every action's got a consequence, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Of course. Of course.
So yes, these feelings may be legitimate, but one has to take a stand about how far they're going to go with it. You know what I mean?
But can I say, having worked with thousands of people, I would actually say that an epidemic problem is not so much that people are feeling their feelings fully; it's that they're not feeling their feelings. And that they're actually not clocking the anger. They're not clocking the resentment. They're trying to assimilate. They're trying to fit in. They're trying to not inconvenience the other. And so I actually think you strike me as someone who's just very expressive, but I think a lot of people are really struggling with the opposite polarity.
Yeah, I never think of it like that. That actually some people could be walking around this earth actually never wanting to get near any. If there's an anger issue coming up or whatever issue, they would rather walk away, or they just don't invite those type of people in their lives normally to cause that, unless it's family.
Or they just don't allow this, or they don't allow themselves to fear it or to feel it because they don't deserve to, because there might be some sort of fear of financial something, that they may be an inconvenience to others. There are a whole bunch of reasons why we pull away from our darker colors.
Yep. That is interesting to see it from that perspective. Yeah, and there's so much we could say on that, but we haven't got the time to. But yeah, I bet you see all sorts in the work that you do.
I do. And again, the main thing that I'm seeing more than anything else is that people don't know who they are. And what I mean by that is that we are truly, if we peel away all the bullshit, who we really are divine beings who have been given an opportunity to be in a body, to experience the pleasures of what being in a body on this earth is. And to enjoy that and to create a life for yourself where you do that to the fullest extent that you can. And while that seems like a kind of low bar, but that's what everyone really needs to wake up and know about themselves. We're supposed to enjoy our lives. We're supposed to enjoy being in bodies. We're supposed to, from a shamanic perspective, heaven isn't some off-planet place. It's here. It's now.
But a lot of people need medicating. A lot of people have all sorts of issues that they medicate with, and that they, and I'm not saying the medication isn't warranted, right? I'm just saying what's going on, and they're trying, and there's lots of people as well, with mental health issues trying to escape this planet, and there's people without those issues that want to get away as well, right? I mean, I know what you're saying there. This is a great, we're here to enjoy, but so many of us are not, and hence why a lot of us are waking up to a different perspective right now, I guess, that this is not what we thought it was.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but it's still in service to that. I mean, we're all born into a collective unconscious that says that that says that there's an economic structure that we follow, that there's a sociological structure that we follow, that there's a racial structure that we follow, and we're born into that. And unexamined, that just is what it is, unless it starts to be examined. And that process is going on right now. But ultimately, the whole goal is that everyone deserves the freedom to actually do what I said, the freedom to decide what they want their life to be. And just to say, this Huna philosophy is, it's very empowering, but I make no claim that every ism that every freedom that has been diminished in us or others isn't part of what we need to do in order to live this wisdom. And so it's not just about a spiritual bypass that we're all just supposed to be happy, but we're all supposed to have the freedom and the choice to decide if that's what we want. And that's what's going on so much right now on the planet.
As we spoke about earlier on, not giving two hoots about what people think as well. That really, for most people, actually, it's not really what we think others think. It's probably what we think others think of ourselves, or it's all the self-judgments within, really. Do you know what I mean? Now, just one thing I wanted to ask you as well.
Sure.
When you got into this work, and I will say this, John, your work is fantastic. Your work is really good. I'm going to say that from the little bit I know about you, and just from browsing through your book. And just having this time with you right now, I like it. I'm so glad I got you on. So I just want to add that for people that may be watching this and thinking, well, he isn't very well prepared and all this, blah, blah. Well, no, I've got so much going on right now. But if others want to explore your work more, please do, because there's, I'm not trying to, the book is where everything that you put all your effort into trying to explain is, all that information that's been coming up on the screen as well. But visitations, you had a visitation at some point in your life, didn't you? That sort of guided you on this course that you're on now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a series of them. I've had a series of them my whole life, and many in Hawaii or around Hawaii. I had a visitation on the Haleakala volcano on Maui, where I was, clouds came around me and I was forced to lie down, and something overtook me and my consciousness altered and I couldn't make sense of what was happening, and it was terrifying, and it felt like it felt like I was having a direct revelation. And that really led to, after that, which went on for about an hour, and after that, that was when the course of my life changed. That was when I actually made a shift in my life. And on the way back up the volcano crater, that's when I said, I'm gonna stop acting, and I'm gonna be a full-time teacher and healer. So that happened, and I think that it's more common for people than not. I think a lot of people receive these kind of synchronicities or these kind of experiences, but they don't have a context for them, or they don't believe them, or they can explain them away in other ways. But yeah, I had that among many.
Okay, John. Well, look, thank you for what you've just said there as well. It's been a powerful, hour almost with yourself. And just before we go, what would you say if there is an important message, which I'm sure, your important message would change all the time as you evolve and, change your stance on things. But what right now is an important message you could leave the audience with?
Well, this is a very specific time on the planet, and it's been prophesied by many indigenous cultures about a very, very difficult time at this specific era, and that it would be tumultuous and it would be even terrifying, but that also along with that time there would incarnate millions and millions of people who would help shepherd in the new consciousness that this difficult time is bringing about. And so if you feel that in yourself, that on some level I'm to be part of the solution, and the solution, it's not something big or highfalutin. It's just love, interconnection, connection with the earth, love and support of the earth. If that feels like something that you're called to be a part of, know that you've incarnated as one of those light workers. and to claim that seat for yourself during this difficult time, and to maybe separate yourself from the narrative that you're seeing on television about what's going on, and claim your seat there, because that's really where you're needed.
Okay. Well, Jonathan, your website one more time is?
JonathanHammond.com.
Okay, and your book's available from all
Yep.
stores, I was going to say, right?
The Shaman's Mind, Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life, Amazon and Barnes & Noble, anywhere where you would get books. Yep.
Excellent. Okay, well, look, Jonathan, just thank you so much, and I hope our paths cross in the future. I hope they do. Love what you're doing, and you offer, you've got sessions that you do as well, so we'll link your website and some of the sessions that you do below as well. So just thank you for coming on.
Mahalo. Thank you so much, Kevin. It's great to be here.